Namaste, hi there. We're going to take a gentle class today, partly because I have injured my hip and partly because I've had a really busy week, and I'm hoping that this might also be the kind of class that you might like to do if you've had a similar week where you feel like you've been in the wars a little. So I'm going to take a very gentle approach today, going to see how my body feels as I move through what I planned, and bits that I don't feel comfortable with, I will talk you through. So we're going to start sitting, and as you can see, whatever it takes to make you comfortable, I'm using a couple of blankets here to support this left thigh from over rotating and being uncomfortable in the piriformis. So I'm just taking a very gentle approach to sitting so that I'm comfortable and not distracted. And I'm just going to align the spine, taking the thoughts to the breath, to allowing the throat to relax, perhaps by bringing the chin down to create that soft ujjayi sound in the throat. So I'm beginning to employ the breath engine, beginning to have that sense of breathing in from above and breathing out from below. Finding that balance between the inhale and the exhale. I'm going to start off with that small movement of the arms. So if you're sitting on a chair, the hands will be palms down, tops of the fingers maybe just touching the knees. Or you could have your hands like I am on your knees. If you're sitting cross-legged. And then as you inhale, you bend the elbows and you expand the chest by bringing the palms facing forward in front of the shoulders. And as you exhale, you draw the navel back towards the spine and you lower those hands. And we are working with the principles of the breath. So you're moving when the breath is moving. And you're still when the breath is still. And there's always a little bit more space so that the breath completes the asana. We don't want to put too much stress by moving too quickly, too deeply, or too deeply, too quickly. So that we impede that breath at all. So I'm starting to be aware of some lengthening of the spine as I breathe in, as the chest lifts. And the in-breath is beginning to lengthen, and I'm beginning to feel as if it's effortless to pause at the peak of that in-breath. So I might choose to take my arms on a further journey, beginning with my hands at my sides. And as I inhale, I lift both arms wide. maybe chin up, so you're gazing up towards the ceiling at the peak of the in-breath. Arms down, chin down as you breathe out. So this asana is inviting the breath into the chest. So you're having to support that arch of the back and that lift of the chest with the muscles in the lumbar spine. So we're making the necessary adjustments so that you can breathe in a deeper breath in, and we respond by breathing a deeper breath out. If your arms are a little tired, you wouldn't want to keep the arms lifted. Maybe if you lift the arms and want to keep them lifted, you could take the hands together. You might not want to be looking up. This might be too tiring for the hands. So think about bringing the chin down. As long as your back is strong enough to hold the weight of the arms, you can stay in the pose for a few breaths. Still breathing your full breath. Keeping that same rhythm of the breath that you establish with the movement. And then when your arms feel heavy, you let them come down beside you and you feel the sensation. You participate in that active response to the asana. Waiting and observing until everything has settled and stopped moving. And take a moment to notice the breath that you are now breathing as a consequence of the asana. So now we're going to go for a stretch for the side, and I find this easier to do by having my hand not too far away from me. If I want a deeper stretch, I can always move my arm, my supporting arm. So I'm going to start by having my palm down on the floor beside me, and because I'm lifted on a bolster, I'm already on a slight lean. If that was uncomfortable or that stretch was already enough, then you might want to lift that hand so that it's lifted about the same height as your hips. And again, I'm going to start with this simple hand to shoulder movement. So I'm going to take my hand, my left hand, passive arm, and I'm going to rest it on the right thigh. And I'm going to look down. And I'm going to take a few breaths here, just thinking about my footprint. If you're sitting on a chair, you can hold the seat of the chair with the supporting arm. And then I'm going to draw the palm back to the shoulder, so the moving arm, the free arm, takes that shoulder back. And as I breathe out, I bring the hand back to the thigh. So this is a really tiny Trikonasana. The posture we're in is creating a little bit more movement in that shoulder and a little bit more space in the left side of the body. You might find that your head is gently rotating. So you may be looking up towards the ceiling on the breath in and down towards the floor on the breath out, whatever is more comfortable for you. And again, if you want to make more of a movement, then all you have to do to find that deeper stretch is gradually lengthen that left arm. You might notice that in your body, in this left shoulder, there's a natural inclination to take the shoulder further back and let the weight of the arm fall behind you. And again, if that is happening, you might want to go with that stretch. You may want the hand behind the head to support the weight of the head. So where are you tight today? What is the movement that is most comfortable, most satisfying? So you're able to welcome that breath in without any discomfort. Yeah, we're making an effort, but we're making an effort to find comfortable. And if we do find comfortable, again, look at the flow of the breath you're now breathing and make sure that that natural, comfortable flow of the breath is not impeded and that you can still breathe that breath, even if you're holding the pose. And don't forget, you can adjust the depth of the stretch by moving the supporting hand further away. But we're actively participating. Breathing in from above and breathing out from below. And whenever you are ready, you can slowly and gently come out of that stretch the easiest way possible, not wasting any unnecessary energy, and come back to a neutral position. And again, wait for everything to settle. Experience that stretch. Notice the impact of the stretch and the movement of the breath engine. And then we're going to start equally gently, beginning to stretch on the other side. So again, the supporting hand is not so far away from you that you lose your firm footprint. And we start with the smallest of the movements, just to notice how it feels. Inhaling, palm facing forward in front of the shoulder. Exhaling, palm down. moving when the breath is moving, to welcome that breath in. And pausing when the breath is pausing. Noticing our habits. Perhaps you notice that you're pushing beyond the breath. Perhaps you notice you're trying to copy with this side what you did with the other side to make it symmetrical. Maybe you're too concerned with it looking good and less concerned about how it feels. And then you can start to play with the stretch. Maybe turning the neck. Maybe extending the arm. Maybe a bit of both. But we're actively engaged in listening to the body, following the breath, and allowing the breath to lead you, allow nature to be in charge, and explore. What range of movement is giving you? What adjustments do you need to make to welcome the best breath in? So we're actually right here, right now, totally focused on how the body feels. Participating in life. And maybe you might choose to stay in the pose. Actively participating in the flow of that breath. Checking that whichever posture you are in doesn't impede that natural breath engine. And when you're done with the stretch, you return gently as possible to neutral. And again, actively participate in those sensations of that stretch. So again, keeping the footprint, so if you're sitting on a chair, keeping equal weight down the back of the thighs and equal footprints on the floor. That's a good precaution to make sure that you're not cheating. And if you're sitting cross-legged, again, noticing the distribution of weight in the sit bones, backs of the knees, thighs, shins, feet. And we're going to start with hands in Anjali Mudra, so that we're focused on the midline of the body at the chest. And again, notice the natural rise and the fall of the hands as you're breathing. So we could inhale and take the hands to the shoulders, just like we did. Exhale, bring the hands to the heart. You might want to make the arms a bit longer. Hands wide as you inhale. Chest lifts and expands, exhaling, hands to the Anjali Mudra. And the next time you're breathing out, take one of your hands towards the opposite shoulder. And you might find that your chin turns so that you're gazing down towards that hand as you complete the breath out. Inhale, stretch back to that neutral position, unwinding. Exhale, opposite hand to the opposite shoulder. Making sure that the breath completes the asana. So we're not working at the peak of our physical limits. There's always a bit more space for that breath. Now, if you wanted to stay in such a twist, then you can, but you may find it easier not to keep that arm extended because that might put a lot of effort in that shoulder. So perhaps the next time you breathe out, exhaling into your twist, you could bring the leading hand in front of you towards the opposite shoulder and then put the other hand in the back. So maybe the back of the hand rests on the hip or the low back. Inhale, widen the arms. Use the muscles in the back to lift the chest. Maybe take the chin down. And exhaling, takes you to the twist. So we're trying to create positive feedback in the body. We don't want to go into such a deep twist we cause any stress or we make it difficult to breathe. And if you do decide to stay in the twist, that we keep that same flow of the breath that we've been working with, that you stay as far as you can feel, but with the weight evenly distributed, so you're not leaning. And we can still employ that breath engine. We can still feel the chest expand. There's still space for that breath to go to. And the exhale is still driven from the abdomen. You can make quite large adjustments to the twist just by adjusting the head. And when you decide you've done with the twist, coming back to neutral and taking those moments to let everything settle and to notice the effect of the stretch. And then, because it's an asymmetric pose, you may or may not want to hold the opposite twist. And again, that might depend on you. For me personally, I'm going to have to make this opposite twist a lot more gentle. So rather than have the hand behind the back, because that's twinging in my hip, I've just put the hand beside my left hip, excuse me, on the floor, and I'm going to put my hand on the opposite knee. Looking for signs of stress and trying to eliminate them. So I'm actively involved in the pursuit of comfortable. And for my efforts, I may be rewarded with that full yogic breath. Whenever you're ready, you can release and come back to neutral. So one more stretch before we come off our bottoms, and I'm going to turn around, but you don't need to. You may already be sitting lengthwise on your mat. And since it's my left hip that's given me a few issues, I'm going to do the left side first, or stretch the left side first. So again, I've got my little leg rest, and I'm going to extend the right leg away from me so that I can work with Janu Sirsasana. So you may feel that this right leg doesn't need to be fully extended, so you can keep the knee bent and have the foot on the floor. Or your leg might be enjoying that extension, okay? You can do this sitting on the edge of the chair with one knee bent with a foot on the floor and the other stretching leg extended. And I'm going to start with that same movement of the arms. So I'm engaging the muscles in the back, breathing in to welcome the breath in, and then I'm going to bring the chin down and I'm going to bring the hands towards the floor taking the shoulders forward and creating a stretch in the back. So inhaling, palms back, back to upright, chin down before you move, and exhale. As you stretch forward. Simple as. Again, depending on how you feel, you might want to make more of a movement with those arms wide in a circle, hands towards the ceiling, breathing in, sweeping wide and down towards the foot, breathing out. And don't be too precious about it. Doesn't matter how it looks. Doesn't matter whether you're perfectly symmetrical. Breath lifts you up. And the breath moves you into the stretch. And if you complete that out breath by bringing that chin right down, notice how the three banders are naturally applying. And again, if you want to stay in the pose, you're looking to stay in a pose which allows you to breathe that active full breath. So you may want to back off a little bit as you inhale to press the chest forwards. And you may wish to release it deeper into the stretch on the out breath. Here very often we notice strategies for a stretch avoidance. So we might be rolling. If you have your right leg extended, the pelvis may have rolled to the right. So make sure the left leg, perfect timing, make sure the left leg has a cat on it, so that it stays weighed down. And most important of all, make sure that you are able to maintain that natural breath engine, that sense that you are still welcoming in the breath from above and you are still actively breathing out from below. Again, constantly adjusting to ensure absolute comfort, nothing impeding the breath. And when you've had enough, very gently, without making any quick movements, coming back to the neutral position. And you may want to free your leg. You may want to put your hands on the floor behind you and give those legs a bit of a wobble. You may want to experience that stretch down the backs of your legs or down the back of the extended leg, or see how the hips might have realigned just by sitting in a neutral position. So we're actively engaged in the outcome of that stretch. And again, when we come to move on the other side, we have to start from steady and comfortable. So whatever it takes, so that we're breathing a full breath before we start. And remember our goal is comfortable. That's our goal. It's not reaching the toes with the hands. It's not staying there 7 breaths. It's not about breathing in for 5 beats and breathing out for 10. It's what can I do to optimize that flow of breath in the body? How can I work with the body to enhance that breath, not impede it in any way? So let's start. Palms facing forwards at the shoulders as you inhale. Hands to the floor as you exhale. Making sure that whatever movement you are making is started and completes with the breath. Maybe bringing the chin right down so that you complete the out breath with all 3 bandha. And pause when the breath is pausing. You might want to expand the range of movement by expanding the arms. Don't overthink it. And if you decide to hold a pose, again, you hold it, leaving enough space, making adjustments so that you can maintain that natural flow of the breath. And if you do find yourself holding the pose, checking that you are in fact completely comfortable, making you sure you don't overstay your welcome by lingering for too long in any stretch. And then when you're ready, you come back to your neutral position. You might want to sit with your legs extended. You might want to sit against a wall so you can rest the muscles in the back a little bit. You might want to have the legs supported, whatever your legs want to do. And coming back to our starting position. So from here, we're going to come down onto our mats, onto our hands and knees, and do a little bit of preparation using cat-cow pose for a couple of different variations of cobra. So we're preparing for a back bend. So what we are investigating here is the range of movement along the spine. Okay, so remember it's breath driven and we're looking to enable the back bend in which we can, the strongest back bend, the most open chest with the minimum of effort. Okay, so when we're in cat, we have gravity pressing down on the spine, helping the back bend. Okay, you've got the strength of your arms to support the shoulders and the strength of the legs to support the hips. So it's the movement up and down along the back that we're going to be investigating. So it's less about looking good and maybe not so much about the head today. We're going to focus on the spine. So you might even want to keep your head still or just, making little movements at the end of the spine. If you don't like your toes turned away, well, that's simple. All you need to do is put something under your shins. And again, if you've got sensitive knees at all, you might want to have the blanket completely under the shin bone. So I can press down hard with my shin bones, but I'm not pushing my knees into the floor. And again, if there's any issue with the hands, you can be on your fists, on your knuckles, on your fingertips, or even on your elbows, if the palms of your hands don't like this. And I'm going to start to work with the breath. So I'm going to focus on enabling the space in the front body. So I'm expanding the chest on the inhale and lifting the pelvic floor, moving the navel back towards the spine on the exhale. You can work a little with the bandhas here. If you bring your chin right down, notice how the 3 bandhas are naturally applied right at the end of the out breath. But it's always the breath that starts and finishes every movement. Some of you might want to make the weight drop out of the hands by bringing the hips back towards the heels as you breathe out. Putting the weight back into the hands as you reach forward with your chin and your chest. And in the next few breaths, coming into child pose, or your version of child pose. Last week we did a supported child pose, so you may choose to do that. I'm going to choose to take the blanket away from under my knees or under my shins now I'm in child pose. And you might want to put it between your heels and your hips. You may want your knees wider apart in this child pose. You may need something under their head. And I'm going to notice how it feels when I have my elbows forwards. Or perhaps I prefer it with my hands behind the shoulders, so hands nearer to the feet. You may even want your hands held behind your back. But even in child pose, we have the sense that we are still welcoming the breath in from above. And we are still breathing out from below. Actively participating in the sensations of life. Aiming to find the most comfortable version of this posture so we can experience that sensation of life. Here, for example, there may be sensations of tingling in the hands and the feet, in the soles of the feet and in the palms of the hands. Maybe that is how you'll experience this energy flow around the body. And again, gently and slowly, taking your time. You release yourself from your comfortable version of child pose and you extend belly down on the mat. And belly down may mean that you might want a blanket or a pillow under the head. You may want to prevent any discomfort in the feet or in the knees even, or even if you've got particularly bony hips under the front body somewhere. I'm going to choose the blanket under the feet, and maybe another one. Just lifting my chest so that I can rest my chin over the edge of that blanket and have my forehead on the floor. So my neck is in line with the spine. And then I'm going to put my palms facing forward in front of my shoulders and use that contact with the floor to draw the shoulders down away from the ears. So if your legs aren't together, maybe it's better for you to put something between the knees. You could put your blanket between the knees so that you can squeeze the legs inwards if they don't meet. I'm going to actively just press my legs together, not so tight that it makes me rigid or makes my buttocks clench, but just so that I feel that one-leggedness, heavy leg. Okay, and I'm going to allow my arms to be completely passive, just enough effort to keep those shoulders down. So on the inhale, we come up. Light in the hands. Exhale, come down. Minimum effort with the hands, so the hand prints stay approximately constant. Breath lifts you up, and the out breath brings you down. The breath starts and completes every movement. One more. And when you release, you may want to fold back into your child pose. But child pose might feel quite different now. So what are you going to do with your shoulders? Where are you going to park your arms? Next time we do Cobra, we're going to do it with strong arms and a passive back. So again, we come to our neutral and comfortable starting position with one heavy leg, maybe a bit of a head start by having a blanket or something folded under the chest. Having the chin free of the blanket or whatever support you're using so that the chin can come right down, forehead to floor. Again, feeling that natural expansion of the chest, breathing in, and that natural lift of the body. And feel the natural lift of the abdomen away from the floor as you exhale. So when you're ready then, as you feel the chest lift, as you inhale, you push with the arms to create a bit more space for the breath. And as you exhale, you gently lower the weight of the body down. The breath still is starting and completing every movement. And one more. And again from here, if you don't like child pose, maybe roll over onto the back. But if you're a child pose fan today, we can come back to child pose to rest from that back bend. And because I use my arms in cobra, this time I'm going to put my hands, either the tips of my fingers on my shoulders or even palm to palm behind my head. I find this modification, the hands behind the head on child pose, is extremely useful after cobra because it helps me stretch out those upper arms. Helps me release tension in the shoulders. And the more comfortable I am, and the more tension I release, the deeper the breath, the more comfortable the pose. So I'm actively engaged in those sensations of life within the body. If you don't like child pose and you're back to floor, hands on the knees, again, you've got the freedom of movement here. You can make whatever kind of movement you like to restore neutrality into the spine. And then if you're still wrapped up in child pose, very gently extend and roll over onto the back. And we're going to review the breath we are now breathing. So those of you who aren't yet supine, Come semi-supine down to the floor so that you have your shoulders resting back and into the floor. The hips are resting evenly back into the floor. The footprints are heavy on the floor. If the hands don't flop down to the floor, again, you can have a blanket here. Sometimes it's uncomfortable in the shoulders to have the hands on the floor. So again, having the hands slightly raised may make your shoulder more comfortable. Whatever needs to be done. So that we can rest. And after some while, the body figures out that it doesn't need to make much effort at all. And you can feel the effort slowly drain, slowly release. Waiting for everything to stop moving. So the only movement you are making is driven by the breath. And we notice that this natural, spontaneous breath is 4 parts, not 1, not in and out. And know that because we've breathed effectively and efficiently, employing the engine of the breath, the body will be well oxygenated. And because we're breathing out deeply, we are releasing a lot of waste every exhale. So our active participation has led to this positive feedback loop in the body, where the body feels completely relaxed and at ease, and therefore it can take this easy breath, and you're not wasting a lot of energy. The body doesn't need much energy. So maybe half the time that you're moving and half the time you're completely still. Nothing moving, not even the breath. So if you were finding that the idea of sitting upright right now is a bit of a bind and you'd rather stay supine, then you can. You might want to make some small adjustments. You might want to have your legs up the wall, for example, or your feet raised on a chair, or put your socks on. Grab a blanket if you think you may get cold. But for those of you who feel strong enough to sit, gently and slowly roll onto your side and peel yourself so that you come up to sit into a comfortable sitting position. You do get more out of the breath if you're sitting upright, because you've got freedom of movement in 360 degrees all around the spine. But again, there's no point being uncomfortable, because then you just won't breathe the best breath or your best breath. So you have to use a bit more energy to stay upright, a bit more effort to stay upright. But I have found that if I just rock the weight forward, cool towards the knees, and then come back a bit. So I'm actively pressing down a little bit with the legs to anchor myself. Pressing the feet down if you're sitting on a chair is another good way of doing this. And I'm going to bring the chin right down to create that natural Jalalabandha in the throat. And I'm going to use the chin mudra. First finger and the thumb, tips of the fingers pressing either palms up, fingers extended, or palms down, fingers curled. You might want to lengthen your arms so the wrists rest towards the knees. So let's start just by square breathing. Whatever technique you use, whether it's counting, listening to the heart beating, chanting your own private mantra, or talking to yourself, you're gradually and gently bringing those 4 parts of breath so that they are approximately the same length. So there's no optimum length that the breath should be, and I suggest you make it easy so that it's completely effortless. And if there's one of those pauses that feels a little bit difficult or challenging, then simply use that as your shortest side. So that gradually and gently, half of the time sitting you are moving because the breath is moving, and half the time you sit or lie, you're not moving because the breath is still. So maybe all of our practice, all of the movement, following the flow of the breath by the flowing body movements that we make, has led us to this, to be strong enough, to be stable enough, to be steady enough, to sit completely still, to be completely still. So some days you might want to let this breath go all at once with one big release or yawning sigh. And some days you feel like you just want to let go of these edits gradually, slowly. You can release your hand from the mudra. Optimize your sitting position. And trust the body to choose the breath that it needs. Perhaps by even taking drastic action, like stopping breathing and noticing the body choosing the breath it needs. If you're comfortably sat, you can sit for longer. Let this breath settle. Some of you might want to lie down to allow this to happen. Whatever feels right for you. And then when you are ready, when the breath is settled, you can release yourself for Shavasana, because having practiced the asana and pranayama, having offered our practice, experienced our practice, we have prepared ourselves to receive some of the other gifts of yoga. So you can make yourself as comfortable as possible, and we'll just see what happens. So first of all, we need to embrace this pose Shavasana. Culturally, there are a lot of reasons why you might not be encouraged to lie on the ground in the middle of the day, particularly if you're practicing in the morning. It might seem counterproductive. It might seem even morally wrong. But just allow the earth to support you. Let the bones settle. We've focused on receiving that breath in, but we also need to focus on releasing. So that we receive and release with equal attention. And notice that quite a lot of the time, neither you or the breath are actually moving. Notice how still the body is, how still the breath, and how still the mind. And know that this is a completely natural state of affairs. It's a completely natural part of the experience of being human, which is what you are. You are a unique and entirely perfect wonder of nature. And our yoga reminds us of that. It brings us back to what's real, away from the fantasy constructs of the human world. Right here, right now, this is real. And our yoga practice helps remind us that we are truly living embodiments, part of nature's perfection. The prana that moves me and you is also the prana that helps the trees grow, governs the green realm, and all living things. And we have this gift of this reawakening connection with you and the planet that supports you and all the other living things that we share this planet with. There's no need to be better, faster, stronger. This experience is freely available to all human beings, everywhere. And we have this opportunity just to enjoy. To recharge our batteries. And to reconnect with what's real. Please remember, this is your practice and you are in your sanctuary. You're in your own space at home. And you must be completely at home. If you want to rest for longer, then you can. Find a way of completing your practice that suits you and complete it when it suits you. I would like to take this opportunity, I will take this opportunity to thank you for making time for your practice and for participating in our experience of life. Our yoga is our participation in life. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Namaste.